I'm on my way to Nitro in the Burlington Plaza to talk to their coach. He's called Braggy. He's Australian. He's been coaching for 40 years, 20 years in sport, 20 years in business. I want to ask him, Braggy, what's success?
JSB Talks Digital.
I'm in the offices of Nitro today and I've heard all about Braggy and I wanted the opportunity to come back and meet him. He's come the whole way from Australia. He's the coach at Nitro, and Nitro have offices in Dublin and in Australia and also in the United States. Braggy, thank you so much for joining me on JSB Talks Digital.
Absolutely, happy to be here.
So I want to talk about what success is. I'm an entrepreneur, I've been in business for 9 years, and a lot of the people that watch my vlogs are also self-starters. There's been a whole wave of, the recession in Ireland, you've experienced it in the United States, and with that came lots of depression and negativity. Thankfully the wave is actually turning and we're all going up this way, much more positive. But I think success to us that have been through that process has actually changed in our mind, whereas before we might have talked about success being finance and being commercially successful, but I think now our thinking has changed. You've worked as a coach for 40 years, 20 years in sport, 20 years in the commercial world. Is there a definition for success, or do we own it ourselves?
I think clearly it's very personal and everyone would define it differently. I get to work with people in non-profit organisations, so making a profit is not that important, it's the result of their work. There's obviously people that are very profit oriented and geared around that, but I sometimes hesitate to just define it by our business or our enterprise. I think personally, there is so much else to life other than what we're actually doing to maybe earn money or to do something special. There's our family, there's our community, there's our environment. And obviously I've seen folks who have been extremely successful in business, but perhaps not quite so successful in other parts of their life. So I think it's personal for everyone, it's how you define it, but ultimately, obviously, I think people want to feel like they're making a contribution, that they're happy and that they are in some way being successful.
So you've started off your career by actually coaching the Australian national basketball team. How do you bring some of those learnings into the business world?
It was probably the best start I could have had for what I'm doing in business, because the thing about professional sport is it's extremely visible. Like, you either win or you lose. There is no grey area, and it's very public. So if you lose, people know, people have got an opinion, they know why you lost or why you didn't. And then to make matters even worse, there's a videotape that shows you every single thing that happened. Now, business is not exposed to that level, but some of the things that I learned through in that environment, and a lot of them were my own errors and mistakes, I think if you can take those and just understand that the business environment is different. So often you'll hear sports people talking about their teams, and fundamentally what they're saying is absolutely true, but you have to understand that the environment is different. The environment in a professional sports team is much different to what the environment might be, say, for example, here at Nitro. But the principles don't change. The principles of success, getting people to work together, the importance of strong leadership with people, that doesn't change. That's fundamental.
So talk to us about some of those fundamental principles then.
I know I'll just go back a little bit to what you said about being successful, and you mentioned some of the people that I've worked with. I think there's a couple of things that stand out a little bit. One is that they seem to have found something that they love doing day to day, like the process of whatever it is they're doing, not necessarily the outcome, but the process. That they are really, really good at that particular thing. and that when they've put those two things together, they've been able to do something special. And whether that something special is make money, or whether it's deliver a result to those who need a result. Those are two of the fundamental things. And then I think the third thing is they understand completely they cannot do it by themselves. That they absolutely have to have good people around them if they're going to get it done. So, as I said, there's no. I've never believed in set formulas. I'm always reticent to say the top 3 things are or the top 10 things are, because it's slightly different depending on the people and the situation. But you do see some kind of consistencies, if you like, in those people that tend to be successful. Probably the only other thing I can think of is the really good ones tend to have a higher purpose. They can take it outside of what they're actually doing and present it in a way that it's bigger than just what you're doing here.
And is that finding your why? Is that what you mean by purpose?
I think so, yeah. I think, we've all, I don't know if we've all read the book, The Why, or What's the Why, but that's clearly in the last few years been a big deal, people trying to find their why. And obviously the bigger that is, the better.
I had a light bulb moment this year. I had quite a few, but one that stands out is that I've strived to be the best in my industry, and I've invested in education, I've invested in systems in my business, and always put the money back in. But this year I kind of discovered, after like 39 years, that investing in me and my personal development was something that I hadn't actually been doing. And when I went to Pendulum Summit earlier this year, they spoke about all the best people have coaches. The best sports people have coaches, the best business people have coaches. I was like, I need a coach. And I hired a business coach, and I hired a life coach. Yeah. Is it that concept of not having to do everything on your own?
That's interesting. Like, I know there are some folks that, and I can only talk about this from my standpoint. There are some people that respond really well to me. There are some that don't have any response at all. There are some, you can help a little bit in a certain area. There's some you can help in a big way. And so I think it really depends. I think fundamentally, if you've got a coach, you absolutely need to trust them. And you don't necessarily need a coach that's going to say, oh, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you should be doing this. You need a coach that's going to listen and understand. And at sometimes it's best not to say anything. At sometimes it's best to say just a few things. But I think the main thing for me, if you're looking for a coach, you want someone that listens really well. Someone that is prepared to listen and actually understand you and understand your challenges and what you're going through. Because unless they do that, they're really not helping you, in my view.
So when you're recruiting and maybe looking at people who are right for Nitro, and I guess we can all learn something from it, I mean, do you want people who are willing to grow and to improve and to take ownership of their own career? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few key parts to our culture. It's about performance first. That's number one. We want people who come in here and perform at their best. We don't tolerate bullshit, like no one any egos or any of that sort of stuff. And then the third thing is you just want good people. Be good to other people, respect people. We're very, very strong on those 3 things. That they're our values, and we will not change those. Our culture might change from time to time, but those 3 things are kind of pivotal to everything. So smart is important, obviously, to be able to do the job.
I don't know how I got here. Smart's involved, but
smart isn't everything.
No.
I was reading an article actually only last night about IQ versus EQ, so intellect versus emotional intelligence, and it spoke about the things that emotionally intelligent people don't do. They don't worry about falling or failing. They don't say yes all the time. And it was really interesting because I guess that's professional and personal, mixing your intellect with your emotional self. Is that becoming more important to organizations right now?
I'm not sure. I think there was a question in preparing for this that you sent. It was about how leaders or people running their own business should respond to the changing digital age.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I know that we do look for is that we want people who are willing to change and adjust, because if you go through creation, it's not the fastest or the strongest or the smartest of the species that gets through. It's the ones that can adapt and adjust. And so, particularly now, with things rapidly changing, you need people that are prepared and understand change. If you've got folks that don't deal with change or resist it, that's always going to be difficult, particularly in a tech industry like we're in.
And my final question, with the digital age, we are totally bombarded with lots of content coming into our social news feeds, into our inboxes, online, on different news sites. And then of course we're watching people and peers in our industry. And sometimes it feels like we're overwhelmed with the content, and then maybe feeling that we're under par because we're comparing ourselves to other people that we were watching and we're seeing their behind the scenes life. Should we just forget about all of that and just stick with our own why and do our own thing and be the great unique self that we were meant to be?
We talked about this before we started the interview, and I have to say I'm not completely across the whole digital marketing thing, but there is, what you've said is, there's no doubt, there's just so much of it, it's mind-bending. I do like the idea of being different. I do like the idea of being able to differentiate yourself, being creative enough to stand out. I think, in this world, you have to try and go down that path. But it's quite interesting. We talk about the digital age. I watched the video on the plane coming across of Warren Buffett, who doesn't have a computer and doesn't have even a calculator. All he does is read papers and obviously reports. So that's different.
Yeah.
Different to what any of us are operating in. So, yeah, it really depends on. Again, I bring it back to personal differences. Everyone wants to do it slightly differently. Probably wherever your business is, it just depends on how important digital marketing is to your business. For some, it's like critical, I would imagine. For others, maybe not so. But if you're going to get in there, you better look different, because there's so much out there, isn't there? There's just so much. So differentiate yourself would be my last comment on that.
Braggy, a pleasure to meet you. I think you're very clear on your own brand, because it's Braggy. I said, should I call you something else? And you said, no, nobody will know me if you don't call me Braggy. Thank you for joining me on JSB Talks Digital.
No problem.
An absolute pleasure, and thanks for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I've been learning this year a lot about personal and business coaching. So my 3 takeaways from the Braggy interview is that success is absolutely personal. Success is whatever we want it to be. Number 2, Braggy says, make sure that you're agile enough to adapt to your environment, to the changing world, to the changing digital age. And number 3, just be yourself. The best self is just yourself.
JSB Talks Digital.
Give me a like, subscribe, and get JSB Talks Digital, the vlog, every Monday morning in your inbox. And please do share with your friends. They'd really appreciate it.